We start today with the tax charges against Trump's CFO. NBC News correspondent for investigations Tom Winter here now alongside NBC News reporter Adam Reese, who's outside the court in New York. Both of them outside the court in New York. Tom, those tax charges against Weisselberg unsealed today. What do we need to know?
Right, so it's 15 counts, and the behavior starts back, according to the indictment, goes back to 2005 up until June 30th yesterday. So it's a 15-year pattern of conduct and activity, and 15 counts in this indictment. It really centers on this idea of illegal off-the-books payments. So what are we talking about, Allison? Basically, we're talking about a setup where Weisselberg would receive perhaps cash, tuition for his kids or for his grandkids, whether or not that there was an apartment, a condominium that he received as a result of this, and then it wasn't properly filed from a tax standpoint. And prosecutors say that $1.7 million is essentially what Weisselberg netted here by not having to properly account for that over the different points over the last 15 years. So that's really the nut of this charge today. I think it speaks specifically to the district attorney's office intention to go after Alan Weisselberg here, to involve the Trump organization in the conduct and the activity. It's very clear where they're going with this, Allison. It's Alan Weisselberg.
Adam Weisselberg turned himself in this morning. He's pleading not guilty to the charges. His attorney releasing a statement today. What did that say? And have we heard anything else from him or from Manhattan DA Cy Vance?
Allison, one thing here is that both Cy Vance, the district attorney, and Alan Weisselberg have one thing in common, and that is neither of them have spoken out throughout this whole process. Mr. Weisselberg's attorney, Mary Mulligan, has put out a statement saying Mr. Weisselberg intends to plead not guilty and he will fight these charges in court. For his part, Alan Weisselberg left the courthouse just as he came in, quietly, no comment. He has not commented throughout this whole process. He has gone outside of his home, driven to work every day, kept his head down. His colleagues say this is a very simple guy. He gets the same sandwich for lunch every day. He keeps his head down. He does the work. He listens to everything Donald Trump tells him to do, and that's all he does. So he will likely return home this afternoon, stay home. He has a home in Florida. If he wants to go to Florida, he'll have to ask the judge for permission. He gave his passport in today as one of the parameters for his release. And we'll see if he has any comments going forward, but it's likely he will remain silent.
Tom, how about the Trump organization? What are we hearing from them today?
It's a vociferous response from the Trump organization, not particularly surprising. You've got them pleading not guilty into court. And then Alan Futerfas, who's really representing and kind of quarterbacking their defense. He spoke the most in court today. He declined to respond to a statement made by Carrie Dunn for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in court. He essentially called it a press release. In the courtroom, outside of the courtroom, he responded. Allison, let's take a listen.
I believe the political forces driving today's events are just that. It's politically driven, notwithstanding the statements by my colleague at the DA's office in court today.
So I think, Allison, here, when you're listening to the Trump organization, they're obviously attacking this. They're attacking it, calling it a politically driven investigation, as you've heard. And so I think right now the district attorney's office is saying, look, hey, we brought this before a grand jury, an impartial grand jury, and we'll settle on the facts. There's a real disconnect here with the Trump organization essentially saying, look, you haven't charged other organizations with similar type activity and behavior. It proves that you're singling us out. The district attorney's office saying in court, hey, look, no, that's not the case. We bring charges like this all the time. So there's a real kind of a disconnect that's going on between those two. Yeah. At the end of the day, one of those entities is charged. It's the Trump organization.
Yeah, two very, very different arguments there. So, Adam, we know he may go home and eat the same sandwich every single day, but what else is next for Weisselberg?
Well, Allison, it'll be interesting to see if he goes to work tomorrow. Will he report back to work on Friday? Will he go back to work on Monday, continue carrying out his duties for Mr. Trump? That's a big question. Will Mr. Trump in some ways distance himself from Mr. Weisselberg? That will be key. But if what we've seen up to now continues, it's likely Mr. Weisselberg, he has said nothing to prosecutors as far as we know. So it's likely he'll return to work tomorrow, continue working for Mr. Trump. And both he and his attorneys and the Trump Organization attorneys will continue to fight this case.
All right, Tom and Adam, great to have you both together today. Thank you so much for your joint reporting. I want to bring in NBC News legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner. Glenn, great to have you here. We finally got a look at these charges. We're looking at grand larceny in the second degree among them. Weisselberg accused of avoiding $1.7 million in taxes. So put this in context for our viewers. How serious is this? And if he's convicted, what kind of penalties are we talking about?
You know, these are serious charges. And perhaps even more importantly, Allison, when you read through this 24-page indictment, it looks like they have the goods. They have tax returns. They have, it looks like, 2 sets of books. And so this is a case that they're probably going to be able to prove in court pretty easily on the papers, on the documents. So just some of the charges that were brought are conspiracy, grand larceny, criminal tax fraud, filing false instruments. Let's just take one of the charges as an example and look what the possible penalties are. There is a scheme to defraud in the first degree. I found it interesting that this is a 15-year scheme that they were allegedly involved in. It started in 2005, and the indictment charges right up through yesterday, June 30th, 2021. And if we look at just that charge alone in the New York law, that's characterized as a Class C nonviolent felony. What does that mean? It carries a maximum punishment of up to 15 years in prison. However, there is no mandatory minimum, so that would be a probation eligible offense. So it is a very wide sentencing range, and that's just one of the charged offenses that carries up to 15 years in prison.
So listen, Glenn, you say it looks like they have the goods. The Manhattan DA's office saying they'll be supplying bank records, business records, grand jury statements, all of this as part of discovery. They also asked for a protective order to prevent disclosure of any of that discovery. Why is a protective order important here?
You know, a protective order basically protects the integrity of the evidence. And it's a judge saying, listen, the prosecutors will give discovery, will give all these records, these tax returns to the defense, but they may not be shared outside the defense team because we don't want this case tried in the press. So protective orders are not that unusual, particularly in cases where there's intense public interest, because we want this case tried in the courtroom, not tried in the media.
And this is certainly getting intense public interest. All right, Glenn, on a day like today, I have to take to your Twitter because you've always got stuff to say. You tweeted today, well, any guess as to who might be unindicted co-conspirator number 1 in the Trump Organization, Alan Weisselberg indictment? Do you get any sense of who this can be? Obviously, everybody wondering here, is it the former president or a member of his family?
Now, I want to cite some reporting from Tom Winter that broke just a few minutes ago, where he said they have indications that it is not Donald Trump. So I think it's important to put that out there. We'll learn more moving forward. But remember this, the controller of the organization, a gentleman named Jeffrey Coney, I believe, or Coney, I may be mispronouncing his last name. He was put in the grand jury, and he's somebody who would have been right underneath Weisselberg in the corporate hierarchy. So it may be, I do not want to assert that he may be unindicted co-conspirator number 1, but we do know that he went into the grand jury, which means he got immunity under New York law, and he would have been forced to testify about everything he knows about the financial operations of the Trump Organization and how Alan Weisselberg was conducting business as the CFO. So that's why when I read this 24-page indictment, and I'm still pouring through it, Allison, it really does look like the prosecutors have the evidence, they have the goods, and now the next big ticket question is, what does Weisselberg do now that his name is one of the marquee indicted defendants in this indictment?
Glenn, I got one more question for you. We're supposed to wrap it up. My producers are going to kill me, but I just have to ask. So many people have been wondering, would Weisselberg flip on Trump? Would he give away some information to try to protect himself? He's obviously pleading not guilty to these charges. Has that ship already sailed? Has he missed his chance to play ball with prosecutors to become disloyal to the former president? Or is that something that could happen going forward if prosecutors put more pressure on him?
Allison, not only has the ship not sailed, that ship hasn't left the dock. It is still taking on passengers. Here's why I say that. Some people are really not at all interested in coming on board as a cooperating witness before they are indicted. They need to see their name as an indicted defendant, and that's what Alan Weisselberg saw today. Now we move to a whole new phase because now we know Alan Weisselberg will be going to trial. And here's the outlier, Allison. Even if he doesn't want to plead guilty before he goes to trial, prosecutors could take him to trial, convict him, and then step back to him and say, how about before you go to sentencing? How's cooperation looking to you now? So that ship is still taking on passengers. It hasn't left the dock.
All right, we will keep watching that ship for sure. Glenn, thanks. Always awesome to have you on important days like this. Appreciate you. Bill Cosby spending his first full day as a free man after nearly 3 years behind bars. His 2018 aggravated indecent assault conviction overturned yesterday on a technicality. It was a complete shock for the women who accused Cosby of wrongdoing. NBC News senior national correspondent Kate Snow has been covering this story for years. She has some of the reaction to Cosby's release.
Allison, I first spoke with a group of more than 20 accusers of Bill Cosby, all in one room back in 2015. Since then, the number has grown to more than 60 accusers. 3 years ago, I watched as they rejoiced when Bill Cosby was convicted in that Pennsylvania court. So you can imagine yesterday, when this new decision came down, they were devastated.
When I spoke exclusively with Andrea Constant in 2018, her case had just led to Bill Cosby's conviction.
You are now going to be known as the woman who took down Bill Cosby.
I never set out to bring down anybody, and I haven't necessarily because I'm not alone. This is a collective consciousness.
Now that collective group feels blindsided by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision Wednesday to set Cosby free.
Everybody said you're so brave. For what? It doesn't matter. I'm actually beyond tears. I can't even cry. I'm so angry.
Because we found justice, and now that's being taken out from under our feet.
After returning home Wednesday, Cosby wrote on Twitter, "I have always maintained my innocence." In a statement, Andrea Constant and her legal team said the court's decision was not only disappointing, but of concern in that it may discourage those who seek justice for sexual assault in the criminal justice system from reporting or participating in the prosecution of the assailant. But they urged victims to make their voices heard.
No matter what technicality he gets off on, he's still guilty.
Cosby accuser Lisa Lott Lublin says nothing will change the fact that Cosby spent more than 2 years in prison.
You seem like you're at peace with it. It's not probably what you wanted, but you've come to some peace with it.
I can only control so much in my life. It has sparked a fire in me. Maybe we can all do something that's going to make a change. You know, that's powerful. That's really, really big.
As for the potential impact on the Me Too movement more broadly and other cases, Allison, you have to remember this Pennsylvania State Supreme Court decision was really tailored and specific about the history of Bill Cosby's case. Gloria Allred, who represents a lot of Cosby accusers, but also represents the majority of R. Kelly accusers and others who are now fighting Harvey Weinstein in a criminal case in Los Angeles, she said yesterday that she sees those other cases moving forward and those witnesses continuing to proceed and speak out. She said nothing will change because of a technical legal ruling in the Cosby case.
The whole nation is mourning with these families. They see it every day on television. They're going through hell. And those who survived the collapse, as well as those who are missing loved ones. I sat with one woman who had just lost her husband and her little baby boy. Didn't know what to do.
President Biden and the First Lady in Florida today meeting with families and first responders, still hoping to find survivors of the condo collapse in Surfside. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from Surfside. Sam, the president spent hours with these families, with first responders today, and we're talking about quite a group. More than 100 people are still missing, and the president took time to meet with all of their loved ones, really tapping into his consoler-in-chief skills. What else can you tell us about what he and the First Lady said to those families?
I think that's the point, Allison, is that you have close to 150 people that are still unaccounted for right now. And from what I'm told, the family presence inside of that room in Bell Harbor, the hotel there, St. Regis, was about what you would see during a family briefing here, which they give every couple days, or I should say 2 times a day. So that's to say you're almost looking at several hundred people in that room, if not more. And President Biden went and talked to every one of them. And I'm told from the mayor of Surfside, there was a 12-year-old girl that he had seen in the aftermath of the building collapse who was sitting there with her phone out and reading something off of it. And he asked her, "What is that?" She said, "It's a prayer. And I'm praying for my father right now because my father was in that building and me and my mom can't find him." And the mayor of Surfside relayed that story to President Biden. And President Biden made sure that that little girl, 12 years old, was there today. He gave her a big hug. I saw the picture of it as well and said, "What can I do to help you? What kind of resources can I give you? But more than anything, let me be standing here right now with you." And that is one anecdote of so many families right now that are experiencing trauma, Allison, because if you look at the memorial that is right near where this building collapsed, you're seeing pictures of graduations and dinners and joyous events and all sorts of things you would typically find in picture frames on your wall. But instead, right now, they're on this memorial, and they're a testament to all the families right now with the depth of pain that we could never know unless you've experienced something this horrifying before. There was psychological trauma and pain that the first responders are experiencing as well, because they're human and they're going through a rubble right now that has people's personal mementos in it, signs of their life, of their livelihoods. They're going through that and still searching for bodies simultaneously. You can only imagine what that would do to anybody, even if you're the most skilled at your job in the world, of searching through rubble. Sure. It is incredibly painful for them too, and he wanted to acknowledge that.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, Sam, just looking at that beautiful wall, that heartbreaking wall, and thinking about, the president who understands the loss so many people are going through because he's been through it himself, offering them some comfort, must have been a very special moment in a very, very difficult week for these families. I know the president also met with Governor DeSantis and some local officials. What can you tell us about their meeting?
So he essentially guaranteed that all of the state, city, and local costs that have been absorbed from 24-hour-a-day search and rescue efforts are going to be absorbed by the federal government. I was talking to the mayor of Surfside to find out exactly how much money that might entail. Tens of millions of dollars, if not more, Allison. He didn't have a specific figure, and obviously this is going to continue to balloon as the search and rescue efforts continue. That's one component, and certainly FEMA teams on the ground and the NIST special investigators as well, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They are out here right now. Yesterday they announced they're going to be doing a full-scale investigation into what happened. That could take years. This is only the 5th time in its entire lifespan that NIST, which has been around since 9/11, is actually launching a full-scale investigation. They have the power to recommend changes in building code and standards. After 9/11, Allison, there were 40 changes in how people evacuate buildings based on what NIST found. So those federal resources are now at play here in Surfside, Florida, and that is something else that President Biden really wanted to underscore in his meeting with Governor DeSantis.
Sam, I have to ask you about this just gut-wrenching search. 18 people now confirmed dead, 2 of them children. We know they were sisters, just 4 and 10 years old. Crews had to stop searching overnight because a large section of the building crumbled. There are now concerns the other half of the building could collapse. Do you have any sense of when they might start searching again? And are they saying anything about the structure and their concerns there?
These are all valid concerns. Let me tell you a little bit about why they suspended the search at 2 a.m., which means now that we're going on about 15 hours of suspended search. One of the columns, Allison, sunk between 6 and 12 inches. And for perspective, I called up a structural engineer with the American Society of Civil Engineers and asked, what does that mean? He said the defection, or the give really underneath the column, should be about 1 inch. So multiply that by 6 to 12, and that's what they're looking at right now. So incredibly dangerous. We have known from the beginning that search and rescue crews here have been risking their lives every single time they get onto that pile. And now we know that there's that added thought of potential sinking and a storm that's coming Monday, Tuesday, Allison, which also factors into the equation of whether or not they're going to have to demolish the remainder of the building. Those talks are ongoing, Allison.
What a week, and it certainly doesn't seem to be getting any easier. Sam, thanks so much for your reporting. we got a treat for you. NBC News Now correspondent Priscilla Thompson's in the house. She's got the headlines for us today from NBCnews.com. Priscilla, we're so happy you're here and so psyched we've got you inside and out of that heat.
Yes, very excited to be inside today, Allison. We're going to start with news out of Los Angeles, where 17 people were injured in a large blast when police attempted to safely detonate illegal explosives during a fireworks bust. Police arresting a 27-year-old man. He's accused of importing the fireworks from out of state with plans to resell them on July 4th. Approximately 5,000 pounds of fireworks and explosives were found in his possession. Luckily, none of the injuries were life-threatening. And actor James Franco agreeing to pay more than $2 million to settle a sexual misconduct lawsuit filed by women who attended his acting school. In their suit, 2 women claim that they and others were coerced into filming overt sexual acts by Franco and his partners. They also describe his school as, quote, fraudulent. Franco and the other defendants continue to deny those allegations. Thousands of people in the Philippines evacuating after the restive Taal volcano spewed a plume of gas and steam more than half a mile high. Officials now saying more eruptions could be coming. As a reminder, last year, Taal forced more than 100,000 people to abandon their homes, and authorities are warning that these new eruptions could be worse. And Chinese President Xi Jinping pulling out all the stops to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of his Communist Party. The great display including an hour-long address where Xi received applause for saying China would not be bullied by foreign nations, warning, quote, anyone who dares to try to do that will have their heads bashed bloody against the Great Wall of Steel. And Princes William and Harry unveiling a statue of their mother, Princess Diana, on what would have been her 60th birthday. All eyes were on the brothers' relationship since this was only the second time they've been seen together in public since Harry and his wife Meghan stepped back from the royal family last year. And those are the headlines at this hour. Allison?
All right, Priscilla, thanks so much. We'll see you in an hour. More migrant families separated by the Trump administration now identified. In the past 6 weeks, pro bono lawyers have found the parents of 23 more kids, according to a court filing, but they still got a ways to go. NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley joining me now. So, Julia, those lawyers are still looking for 368 children's parents. What else does this court filing tell you about those kids and where their parents might be?
Well, it tells us, Allison, that the majority of those parents are believed to have been deported. And these lawyers have been at this now since 2019, trying to track down these families ever since it was revealed through an inspector general report that potentially thousands more families were separated than we originally thought. That's when we realized that the practice actually started in 2017, not just in 2018, when the media attention turned to it. So they've been putting boots on the ground. They're knocking on doors. They're trying to find these families. Some of them, they believe, may be in the United States. And I should say it could even be that they've been reunited. It's just that this process is so confusing and so cumbersome because the Trump administration did not keep track of what happened to these families after they separated them. They didn't get addresses. They didn't get phone numbers. So it's been really tough to figure all of this out. But these lawyers have been asked by a federal judge to do it, and they're keeping up this until they find it out. I mean, in the fall, we were talking about over 600 families that hadn't been found, and now we're down to 368. So little by little, they are finding more.
Little by little, as you say. Julia, when he first took office, President Biden set up a task force to reunite these separated families. What are you hearing from the lawyers involved and the Biden administration about their progress so far?
Well, the administration's task force said that there were about 2,100 families that were believed to still be separated. That includes some that have been found and some that haven't been found. And so far, they've been able to bring back about 38 families as their parents reuniting with their children. Many of those were deported. And the reason they hadn't been reunited was simply that the parents didn't want to bring their children back to the dangerous conditions that they fled from in the first place. So those parents recently have been given temporary visas where they could stay in the United States for 3 years. But the lawyers want a permanent fix for these parents to say these are families who underwent so much trauma, they should be given special protection under U.S. law. That hasn't happened yet, but we understand that those negotiations are ongoing. And according to the ACLU, they say, look, it's a step in the right direction.
Let's talk about the overall numbers here. You referenced it, but in all, lawyers think that more than 5,500 families were separated under the Trump administration's zero tolerance policy in 2019 and in an earlier pilot program. So how many are still apart? What are we dealing with specifically here?
Yeah, that's right. So they believe that in a 2017 pilot program and in 2018, during that official zero tolerance policy, there could have been as many as 5,500 separated. And then we didn't know about the vast universe of these until 2019. So they're trying to, track down these families, see where they are, see what they can offer them, and then bring them back. And we expect that once a lawsuit is finally settled and negotiated, and these families are given things like mental health services and the right to stay in the United States and work and to claim asylum, then we may be able to see the floodgates open in a very positive way and see potentially thousands of families reunited with their children. And of course, when that day comes, we'll be there waiting and watching for it.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful news. Still, as you said, thousands of families that need to be reunited. Juliet, thanks for your reporting. A historic heat wave killing at least 80 people in the Pacific Northwest, many of them found alone without air conditioning or even a fan. NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman here now. Michelle, a majority of the deaths in Multnomah County, Oregon, that's where Portland is. What is the weather typically like there in the summer, and when will folks in that county start to see some relief? And by the way, wonderful to see you even under such tough circumstances.
I know. It's so good to see you. I love seeing your face. And yes, I know we're talking about this extreme heat. We've been focusing on it since last weekend, and we're going to continue to talk it at least through the next 5 days. So typically in places like Portland, Oregon, Seattle, they're looking at 70s, although today they're cooler. It's in the Intermountain West where we're looking at some really hot conditions. So let's go ahead and look at the graphics, because we are looking at records being shattered all across the area. We're looking at temperatures in the triple digits. We had all-time highs that were shattered, and we are going to continue to see that in many, many areas. I guess we don't have those graphics, but I'll just talk you through them. So today I mentioned Portland and Seattle. They have kind of a little blanket over them, a stratus cloud, let's say, and that's keeping them a little bit cooler. There we go. So dangerous heat, where we see that hot pink, that's extreme heat warning, and that's through Sunday. That's what we really need to focus on. So when you talk about these deaths and fatalities and how dangerous this is, it's not just the all-time highs. It's not just the extreme heat. It's also, we're not cooling off at night, and it's a long duration, and a lot of people don't have air conditioning. They don't have fan, as you mentioned, and that's what's really causing the taxation on the body. So 4 million impacted through Sunday. The pink, the heat warning; orange, we're seeing that heat advisory. And this is what it looks like in terms of the setup. You see those arrows? That's a jet stream. That's really high. It's sort of like a roadblock. When you lift that out of the way, that allows that hot air to come up and sort of lock in place. Then we have an area of high pressure. It's sort of like that sit and spin we had when we were little. It's just spinning in that heat day after day after day. So we're looking at records that have never been broken before. We're looking at temperatures where some of these people have never experienced. So some of the temperatures today in Spokane, 96, Burns, 94, Boise, 101. They're 20, 30, 15 degrees above normal for this time of year. Billings, 99. It holds on through Friday, 102 in Boise, 96 in Burns, Spokane, 96. 100 degrees once again in Billings, 15 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. And then again, this is when it's dangerous, when it sort of just lingers and your body is stressed for day after day after day. So early next week, we're looking at Monday, 88 degrees in Portland. Again, that relief is today with that stratus cloud, the stratus clouds over them, but that lifts tomorrow, Sunday, Monday. Spokane still in the 90s, still in the triple digits in Boise. Salt Lake City, we're looking at 99 degrees. Now take a look at this. It's July 1st, and NOAA puts out sort of a prediction for the month in terms of temperatures, also precipitation. And I do want to mention that many of these areas are in extreme droughts. That does not help. So look at this. For the month of July, it's expected to be above average. We're looking at very dry conditions that can spark wildfires. A lot of places in Canada have had wildfires over the past few days. So that's going to be a big story coming in the next 5 days. Another big story is Tropical Storm Elsa. We're looking at 600 miles east-southeast of the Windward Islands. The winds are at 45 miles per hour. It's moving west-northwest at 28 miles per hour. That's pretty slow, but we do expect it to pick it up over the next few days. Look at it goes to the Caribbean Sea. And then this is where I kind of want you to stop on, because we're looking at that cone of uncertainty, or the cone of concern, as we call it, including Miami. So if you think about Surfside, Florida, all the recovery efforts, everything that is happening there, just the news over the past week, that would be the worst. The last thing that we need is a tropical storm kind of impacting them. But right now, as it looks, the cone of concern does include parts of central and southern Florida. But again, this could change. We're going to watch this over the next several days. We have a lot of time. It's going to meander west. It's going to meander east. It's going to slow down, speed up. So we will certainly continue to watch this over the weekend, too.
All right, Michelle, let's hope this one just kind of moves itself along, maybe dies out somewhere and doesn't cause a problem for folks down there. I know they always deal with a very tough hurricane season and aren't probably too anxious to get that started. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
It's time for The Bottom Line, our daily look at what's going on in the business world and beyond. It is Thursday. You know what that means. Weekly jobless claims are out. 364,000 Americans filing for first-time unemployment benefits last week. Those numbers, a new pandemic-era low. Teeing up the June jobs report out tomorrow. Plus, Robinhood ponying up millions for trading outages and misleading customers. We got a whole lot of news today. CNBC correspondent Christina Partsinevelos is here to break it all down for us as we kick off the second half of 2021. Christina, let's start with those jobless claims, the best we've seen since March of 2020. Hit us with the positives, the negatives in those numbers, and give us a little preview, if you will, of the June jobs report tomorrow.
Will do. So you have fewer people that filed for unemployment insurance last week. So that showed us the U.S. job market is improving slightly. You did mention that 364,000 claims filed. The last time there were fewer claims was just before the worst of the pandemic back in March 2020. So we're not that far off. And today's decline in those unemployment claims, which think of it like a proxy for job layoffs. That comes ahead of the June U.S. employment report out tomorrow. So economists are expecting the unemployment rate to drop to 5.6%. We're also expecting roughly about 706,000 new jobs added last month. But even with that increase, if it happens, because we'll get the numbers tomorrow, the labor market would still be around 6 million jobs smaller than before the pandemic hit.
So, Christina, this one might shock some people. Maybe it won't, but a new report shows that the world's ultra-wealthy population grew in 2020 during the pandemic. So how did they weather last year so well when so many regular folk were really struggling?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Across the board, though, we did see a rise in wealth. But specifically, you were mentioning the ultra-high net worth population that managed to grow despite the pandemic. And so this is an exclusive club for those that are worth over $30 million. And in 2020, 4,700 people at least, it was a little bit over that, joined that club, and that's an increase of 1.7%. So if you're asking why, these people saved more, they refinanced their loans, they paid off debt because many people weren't going out and spending on traveling, restaurants, daycare, et cetera, or babysitters, I should say. And then most importantly, with the higher income bracket, they did reap the benefits of monetary policy and the soaring stock markets. And that's where a lot of the wealth came from. And so for those, the majority of the ultra high net worth population, they do live in the United States, especially in New York, followed by China. So a lot of it has to do with investments.
Christina, I must be doing something wrong. I got some money in the stock market. I refinanced my mortgage. I tried to be careful over the pandemic. I didn't get into that club of the ultra wealthy. I'm still working.
You're still working on it. Man, at least you like checked off all those boxes. So that's pretty good, right? I would say that you probably are doing a little bit better in 2020 versus like 2019, maybe.
Maybe, but I don't know. I got a long ways to go till I hit that ultra wealthy club. They have the secret sauce. All right, let's talk Robinhood. The online trading platform is hit with a $70 million fine for causing widespread and significant harm to customers. That's never good news. This is the biggest fine the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, otherwise known as FINRA, has ever handed out. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, well, this shows that FINRA means serious business right now because the trading platform, Robinhood, was accused by Wall Street's self-regulator of giving investors false or misleading information dating all the way back to 2016. So examples would include whether customers could place trades on margin, so that means borrowing money, how much cash is in customers' accounts, how much buying power customers have, and the risk of a loss customers face in options transactions, which are a little bit more complicated. And so Robinhood was also accused of purposely creating outages on its website back in March 2020. So individual customers actually lost tens of thousands of dollars. Robinhood neither admitted to it nor denied the charges.
Will not confirm or deny. We've heard that line before. All right, Christina, thanks for being with us. It's always good to see you.
Thank you.
If you cut off federal unemployment benefits, will people go back to work? Dozens of states are giving it a try. So how is that helping the worker shortage in the United States? NBC News senior business correspondent Ben Popkin takes a look.
Ending federal unemployment benefits early was supposed to get people back to work when 26 states announced it in May. Employers facing a crippling worker shortage are blaming the benefits, saying those out of work were getting more than employers could afford to pay, even after raising wages and offering signing bonuses. So is that the case? Now the data is rolling in. Jed Kokel, chief economist for job site Indeed.com, analyzed how job search activity changed in these states turning down the federal aid. At first, it seemed like the plan might be working.
When states announced that they would be opting out of those benefits early, we saw a small temporary increase in search activity by about 5% compared to the national trend.
But then something happened.
Now we're looking at what's happening to search activity when these opt-outs are taking effect, when states are actually pulling out. And we've actually found, if anything, a slight decline in search activity.
Experts say data like this questions the logic for ending these benefits early while placing millions at risk.
Workers are going back to work, in states that are cutting off benefits or not, in a relatively equal fashion. One side it says, well, this is just welfare and people who are lazy and who don't want to work, and we're paying them not to work. Another view of it is we have record numbers of people who lost their job, and we are not going to recover from this economically overnight.
Money isn't the only thing at stake. Workers have virus concerns. Some can't find work in their old field for the same pay. Others have childcare, health conditions, or have left the industry. And older workers complain of ageism.
Because I think a lot of people look at my age and they don't know that I'm capable of doing almost anything. So it's hard. It's hard.
Lynette Collins is a 57-year-old unemployed server in Gary, Indiana. She and her husband, a disabled veteran, moved in with her daughter and 3 grandchildren to help with childcare and pay bills. She's been out of work since lockdowns closed restaurants in March 2020, but not for trying.
They'd say, oh, well, they want us to apply for jobs. I've been applying for jobs now for a year, and I never get a call back.
As of this week, 21 states have ended their benefits early. Tennessee and Maryland will end theirs on July 3rd, with Arizona and Louisiana to follow. Indiana was scheduled to end theirs on July 19th, but was ordered this week to reinstate the benefits after a worker lawsuit. The state plans to appeal. The enhanced federal benefits will end for the rest of the country as scheduled on Monday, September 6th, Labor Day. In the meantime, Mrs. Collins and others struggling to find work find they're slipping behind.
Usually we'll have our bills paid on time, or right at the time, but they wouldn't be late. But now with this, it's gonna hold us back a little.
The Supreme Court closing out its term today, upholding 2 restrictive voting laws in Arizona. The first bans voting in the wrong precinct. The other limits who can collect and drop off absentee ballots. Challengers argued those laws made it harder for minorities to vote and violate what's left of the gutted Voting Rights Act. Justice Samuel Alito, writing for the majority, saying mere inconvenience cannot be enough to demonstrate a violation. Here's NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams.
This was a major test of the landmark Voting Rights Act. The court took up 2 restrictions in Arizona, one allowing the state to throw out votes that were accidentally cast in the wrong precinct, and another that said only voters or their family members or caregivers can turn in a person's mail-in ballot. Democrats challenged both laws in court, saying they made it harder for minorities to vote. But today, in a divided 6-3 court, with the court's liberals dissenting, the Supreme Court upheld those restrictions. Justice Samuel Alito wrote the majority opinion. He said all voting laws impose some burden, and they don't cross the line and violate this law even if they create small disparities in voting, as long as the state has some justification for them, like preventing fraud. But in a blistering dissent, Justice Elena Kagan said the court ignores the fact that voter discrimination is actually getting worse. She said the ruling weakens the Voting Rights Act, a law, she said, that stands as a monument to America's greatness and protects against its basest impulses. Election law experts say the court now leaves few legal weapons to challenge the new voting restrictions that were recently passed in nearly 20 states. One other thing, no word tonight of any retirements. The last 9 justices to step down for something other than health reasons announced their plans on or before the court's final decision today. So that suggests that Justice Stephen Breyer will probably be around next term.
Okay, so it is a little bit after July 1st. It's 12:01, and our flight got super delayed, but we just got a notification in our Icon Source app that we have an opportunity and a deal from Boost Mobile. So we are gonna wait till we get to the hotel to open it up, but that is super exciting. So an hour and 30 minutes can't come faster.
Fresno State's famous basketball stars, the Cavender twins, cashing in on the NCAA's brand new name, image, and likeness rules. The NCAA lifting those NIL restrictions at midnight, and not too long after, the Cavenders became spokeswomen for Boost Mobile. Hannah and Haley are here with me now. I can't thank you guys enough for taking the time out from signing your new endorsement deals to hang out with us on NBC News Now. So you guys posted this TikTok when you learned you'd be able to make some money from this new NIL policy. Today you've got billboards in Times Square. You got endorsements. This is a big deal. Hannah, how does it feel?
It's honestly unreal. I don't know if it's hit me yet, but just having this opportunity is amazing, and I'm just super grateful for Boost Mobile and Icon Source for making this happen.
Awesome seeing your billboard out there. That is so cool. So, Haley, there's a lot of talk about how male football and basketball players can make a ton of money from NIL sponsorships. But let's talk about the ladies. You two have a huge social media following. How do you plan to capitalize on that? And what does this NIL rule change mean for you and other female athletes?
I think it just shows the world that women are capable of the same opportunities as men. This is just a prime example. And through Icon Source app that we use for the Boost Mobile, they're very work well with women, and they're very for it. So we are just super thankful for them, and being able to show young girls looking up to us that, you know, you can do anything even if you're a girl.
Heck yes, you can. Hannah, would you like to see the NCAA go further and actually let athletes get paid to play?
I don't have any comments on that right now. My personal opinion is I think that all athletes should be able to benefit from their name, image, and likeness. So I'm just super excited to have these opportunities with these brands right now.
Haley, how about you?
I'm with Hannah. I think that athletes getting paid to play is a whole different ballgame, but I do think that this is a big moment for college athletes, so we're just ready to celebrate in New York.
All right, can you guys make us a deal, though, that you won't spend so much time doing endorsements and sponsorships, that you'll still keep up your social media? Because people will be upset if they don't see it on there as much.
Yes, for sure. That's our priority.
Thank you guys so much for being with us, and congrats on the deal. It's great news. So psyched to see you guys cashing in.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Celebrate tonight.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.